Good morning. Today is the International Labor Day, and I wish to convey my greetings to all the functionaries, all the trade unions, and all other labor leaders who are involved in the promotion of the welfare of the worker, as also trying to secure rights for them. Let me go through the background of the International Labor Day, or May Day as it is known, and how does it relates to the present situation, and do we need to continue with this rhetoric of celebrating every day the May Day, or do we need to look into the context of the present society? I think it was probably in Chicago in 1886 that for the first time over 13,000, 14,000 workers came together protesting against the industrial revolution that was going on at that time. And the protest was primarily because of the excessive exploitation being faced by them, and at that time they to secure the strength of their movement, they spoke about workers of the world unite. But world as on that day was different than world as of today. In those days, world comprised primarily of the manufacturing companies, manufacturing countries, while the countries in Africa, in Asia were nowhere in picture. Today, you have United Nations, you have over 200 countries which are independent and have their own right to decide with regard to rules and regulation as it regulates the world of work. International Labour Organization, of course, since 1991 has been promoting this idea of having uniform rights across the world, in spite of the fact that different countries are at the different stage of development. But these are the conventions that are adopted by ILO are something that has universal in character, and as such, irrespective of the level of development that each countries are positions, these conventions are to be respected, more so if that has been ratified by the member nation. There are 8 conventions there are 8 conventions that are fundamental in nature. They are human rights, and those conventions do not require any ratification by the member nation, and as such it has to be respected by all the countries, whether ratified or not. We are currently living in a different world. The markets are united, they're globalized, while the labor is localized. We find that countries after countries are putting restrictions with regard to how to restrict the movement of population or the workforce from one country to another country. But there are no such restriction insofar movement of the commodities is concerned. And this has come in an environment of the crisis that the world is facing since 2008, the global financial crisis. All the countries are faced with the economic slowdown, and especially in those countries which were linked to the international trade, you find that one finds that the demand for their products has drastically come down. And as such, whether we look at the US, you look at the Europe, we look at Africa, you look at Asia, we find that all these countries were going through an economic slowdown. Year 2020 brought new challenges. Year 2020, we find that we had this virus coming in the first or second week of January, which created an environment of fear among the people, because the pace of spread was so high that one found that all the existing measures were proving to be insufficient to check the growth of the infection caused by this virus. And within a period of, let's say, 3 to 4 months, over 3 million people got affected by this virus, and over 100,000 people have died because of this virus. And interestingly, majority of the deaths have come from the global north, those which were much more developed, financially much more buoyant, and technologically much more advanced. Now, if we look at the current scenario insofar the impact of coronavirus or this virus that has come, we find that Europe is one region which are affected the most, and US is one country which has the highest number of deaths. So you find that although the level of development are much more higher, most of the infections and the death has come from global north, while the global south, the figures are low. There are arguments that they don't have the identifying capacity, but all said and done, we find that cases from Africa, cases from Asia are much lower than the cases from Japan, for example, from Korea, for example, and from US and Europe. Now, in that situation, how do we look at the media? Do we continue to move out and protest against the rights, non-respect of the rights of worker, or do we have to find any other way? Because in the current scenario, the national governments have taken policy decision not to allow mass assembly of the people because of fear of spread of virus. And also, I find that both worker and the entrepreneur, more so micro and small enterprises, are more adversely affected by this case. One has to see that because of the rapid pace of spread of this virus, coronavirus, which is leading to deaths, various national governments have taken decisions which are to locking down their economies. Borders are closed, international flights are not allowed, domestic flights are banned, road transport also has come to a standstill. So you find that there is complete lockdown of the national economies, which is adversely impacting the income of the country as also income of the workmen. Was impacted are of course those who are non-regular worker or non-documented worker, as also those who are working away from their houses as a migrant worker. If we look at the example of developing countries, take the case of India, take the case of Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, you take the case of West Africa, you take the case of Southern Africa, you find that informal economies accounts for a larger section of the workforce, while the trade union focus has more or less been on the industrial worker and regular worker. And this has led to neglect of the rights of the larger workforce, resulting in the reaction that we have seen over the last 3 to 4 weeks. In India, for example, on the electronic media, one finds scores of people walking on the street for 50, 100 kilometer, 50 kilometer, 100 kilometer, thousands kilometer, trying to reach their respective houses, so where they feel more secure. And this is an unprecedented situation. And in this unprecedented situation, I think the May Day has to be celebrated in a different manner. Of course, we should work towards instrumentalities that leads to workers of the world unite in spite of the fact that the world is divided. We also need to work towards securing the rights of the worker as defined in the ILO or in the national laws. But more immediate concern for me as a functionary who has been active with the trade union for the at least last 30 years is that what is the how do I reduce the pain of the worker who are left high and dry by the present system, who are left high and dry by the policies and programs. My concern would be how do I provide them a sense of security so that I, as a representative of the workers, they feel confident to come to me and say that this is what I need assistance and not that. Rights are there. Fights for right will always be there. But at the present moment, the trade union should work towards seeing that their pains are reduced to the extent that they don't feel left without any protected support. Now, what do we do? What do the trade union should work for? I think first and foremost is that the trade union and the labor organization has to realize that they are pressure group, not political parties. They are pressure group and they are there for the interest of the worker, whether those workers belong to one political party, one region, one religion or other, one gender or other. That is not important that should not be important for trade union. The fact that they are workers, that should be the primary reason for the trade union to look after the interests of these workers. And in that context, I would ask the trade unions to shun their political ideology, shun their political differences, at least for the time being, and work together collectively to look into the current interests of the workers. One, they feel secure wherever they are positions, and then they find some helping hand so that if they desire to go back to their respective state of domicile, they are helped. The challenge will be more when when the things improve and you want them to come back. That is also the responsibility of trade union to prepare itself for such a situation where they become an instrument to bring the workers back to places where the jobs are available. Another factor that the trade union should keep in mind or should work toward is that the world is increasingly moving away from large factories and large manufacturing units. Today is the day of supply chain, and today is the day of small enterprises, lean and thin enterprises. In such an environment, the organizing process, the membership enlistment will no doubt be difficult, but trade union has to be prepared for that. And as such, they need to move out from their present comfort zone of only looking after the concerns of the factory workers, the regular workers. They need to move out to villages, need to move out to macro and small enterprises, and they need to move out to agriculture sectors and work as a facilitator rather than a challenge to the enterprises. The period of divide, whether divide on capital labor basis or divide on the basis of political ideologies, is increasingly going away. We find that each house is becoming a production unit, what Mahatma Gandhi, for example, foresaw, or Schumpeter saw, that in countries like India, in countries like where population is high, the environment is suitable for small enterprises, cottage industry and others, where it's not only the production but also job creation is the focus. And as such, the unions should prepare itself for a situation where there should be promotion for micro and small enterprises, also cottage industry, own account enterprises. And these enterprises are, and those who are working in such enterprises are brought within the fold of the trade unions, within the fold of labor organizations. Currently what we have? Currently we have domestic workers, we have street vendors, we have salt workers, we have a loader and unloader, we have building and other construction work. But these are the workers who are facing the major challenges because they are neither identified as a worker nor the support that they are supposed to receive have really reaching them. And therefore, on this May Day, I'll call on the trade unions to work towards a situation where the trade union becomes supporting hand to the trade union to the workers in the form of providing them and linking them to the facility that are available. Thank you.